Nameless Midnight, Origin Story, and Nightshade are all rewards for completing the Vanguard Strike playlist quest. Which one should you pick? We'll start off with Nameless Midnight. Its signature perk is Explosive Payload, which causes each round to create a tiny explosion. This also does cause a slight damage boost. If you plan on doing mostly PvE activities, this is one of the best weapons that you can use in your kinetic slot. Period. The combination of it being a scout rifle with minimal fall-off damage, explosive rounds that both increase damage slightly and stagger targets, and it just being a wonderfully consistent weapon puts it at the top of every PvE player's heavily used weapons list. The real key here is that the explosive rounds also pull double duty to stagger targets, so if you're ever taking damage from something, chances are you can just stun lock it while killing it. This will work on basically everything aside from shielded enemies and boss-type mobs. The explosive rounds also do help with dealing area of effect damage to enemies that are tightly packed together. It won't be as powerful as some of the other dedicated AoE perks, but it will still do enough damage to either stun enemies or make it easier for you to swap targets after dealing with your first. The only downside of the weapon is that it's so good you can forget to swap away from it sometimes, which can lead to you having no ammo. This is mostly true for almost every good weapon out there though. If you don't swap to your energy weapon consistently, you'll probably run out of ammo. In PvP, Nameless Midnight is surprisingly versatile as well. It can dominate mid to long range encounters due to its easy to control recoil, and the explosive rounds can confuse enemy players in battle. The explosion effect will obscure the target's vision a little bit, and if they're aiming down sights it will mess with their recoil slightly more than a normal weapon. Most maps will also lend themselves well to scout rifle play, since all of them generally feature some prominent lanes that you can post up in. Next up is the Auto Rifle Origin Story. It features the Rampage perk, which gives a stacking damage boost of 10% per stack up to 3 stacks. If you prefer to wield auto rifles, then this is another one of the top kinetic weapons out there. For PvE, this is one of the top auto rifles that you can use. This is mostly due to the Rampage perk allowing you to increase the damage by up to 30%. While the perk does fall off after about 3 seconds, it refreshes after every single kill. If you have a reload mod or another perk that will help you reload, you can easily keep this damage increase rolling for a long time. It will make cutting through groups of adds easy, and if you find a beefier enemy during that time, you will also be able to chunk away their health easier without having to swap to your power weapon. In PvP, Origin Story is going to be competing against some pretty strong weapons in the kinetic slot. Fortunately, its recoil allows it to be set apart from the rest and gives those looking for an extremely easy weapon to use a viable option. Combining its recoil, high range, and the Rampage perk, you have the makings of a wonderful weapon for flanking groups of enemies and mowing them down. The damage boost will really only come into play during these group fights, since it doesn't last long enough to allow for too much travel time between engagements. But when you get pushed by multiple enemies, it can give you the opportunity to prevail or at the very least trade with some of them. The last weapon we'll go over is Nightshade. It features the Kill Clip perk, which grants a 30% damage increase for 5 seconds when reloading after a kill. Pulse rifles as a whole are in a little bit of a weird place as of this video. They're supposed to kind of bridge the gap between auto rifles and scout rifles, but in the process they end up being just a worse scout or a worse auto rifle. That being said, for kinetic pulse rifles, Nightshade is one of the best ones that you can use. In PvE, that 30% damage increase from Kill Clip allows you to dispense some fantastic damage. The only downside is that you cannot proc Kill Clip while it's currently active, so you have to start your reload after the perk notification leaves your screen. The timing can be tricky, but it can also allow for a pretty cool rhythm to develop in some fights. With that said, I still feel like the other two weapons in this video will give you better results for general play unless you are absolutely dead set on making pulse rifles work for you in PvE. Now in PvP, Nightshade does end up doing pretty well. The Kill Clip perk causes the weapon to do the same damage as the slowest rate of fire archetype, so you can kill someone consistently in just 3 bursts. Of course, that means you have to get a kill in the first place to get that perk procced. Fortunately, Nightshade also has the lightweight classification on it, which means it will give you a movement speed increase. That can help you strafe left and right in a gunfight or just evade a fight you know you are going to lose. Of the kinetic pulse rifles out there, Nightshade is definitely one of the better ones to use for PvP. With that being said though, auto rifles and scout rifles are just so much more consistent in their roles, and you're having to give up the best of those worlds to use this pulse rifle. I wouldn't recommend using this in PvP unless you are again trying to make pulse rifles work for you. One thing you should take away from this video is that each of these weapons are some of the best in their weapon types, especially for the kinetic slot. You really can't go wrong with picking one because it doesn't get much better than those for kinetic weapons. My main thing I need to be asking you is, where do you plan on spending most of your time? If you plan on doing a lot of PvE activities, then Nameless Midnight would be my top suggestion to you, with Origin Story being a close second. If you wanted to spend more time in PvP, Origin Story would be the best thing I can recommend that you pick, and Nameless Midnight is a bit more distant second. Nightshade takes third place in both of these areas in the game because it's a pulse rifle, and that weapon class just doesn't perform as well as they should. I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, a positive rating would be appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.